All right, so we're diving into the world of a Silicon Valley legend today.
Okay.
But this guy, Bill Campbell,
Yeah.
he's got a pretty unusual backstory for a coaching icon.
Really? How so?
Well, he racked up 6 straight losing seasons as the head football coach at Columbia University.
Whoa. Okay. That's not exactly the kind of track record you'd expect.
Right. It makes you wonder how someone with that kind of start
Yeah.
becomes this revered figure in Silicon Valley.
You'd think those early experiences would have, well, maybe steered him away from coaching altogether.
Exactly. But it seems like those experiences, those early challenges, actually laid the groundwork for his later success.
So maybe it's not about winning or losing, but about the lessons learned along the way.
Yeah, and speaking of coaching, think about it. Coaching itself has evolved so much. It's not just for athletes or performers anymore.
Right. It's everywhere now.
I mean, think about you, anyone listening, everyone can benefit from having someone in their corner, a guide to help them navigate challenges and reach their full potential.
It's like having that extra push, that outside perspective that helps you see things you might miss on your own.
Totally. And Bill Campbell, he didn't just join the coaching ranks. He kind of created his own category of coaching.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was coaching people at the top of their game, CEOs and founders, and he was doing it in industries. He wasn't necessarily an expert in himself.
So it wasn't about him having all the answers then. It was something else, something more fundamental.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're going to explore in this deep dive.
I'm intrigued.
We'll be looking at excerpts from Trillion Dollar Coach, a book written by people who were coached by Bill Campbell himself.
Oh, wow. So this is firsthand insight into his methods.
Yeah, we're talking Eric Schmidt, Jonathan Rosenberg, Alan Eagle. These are people who worked alongside Bill and saw his impact up close.
So these aren't just abstract theories. These are principles that shape some of the most successful companies in the world.
Right, and through their stories, we're going to try to understand what made Bill Campbell such a powerful coach.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Bill grew up in Homestead, Pennsylvania, a steel town. His father was a physical education teacher and also worked in the mill.
Okay, so a pretty blue-collar upbringing then.
Yeah, and even as a kid, Bill showed signs of being, well, kind of a go-getter.
What do you mean?
Well, as a high school freshman, he was writing opinion pieces for the local paper.
Oh, wow.
And these pieces were all about the importance of getting good grades, emphasizing the long-term benefits of education.
So even back then, he was focused on fundamentals and playing the long game?
Absolutely. He was already thinking ahead.
That's impressive.
Now, fast forward to his time at Columbia University.
Okay.
He plays football, but here's the thing. This guy, 5'10", 165 pounds, volunteers for the track team as a hurdler.
As a what? A hurdler?
Yeah, they were short on guys, and Bill just steps up.
He must have been pretty athletic.
Well, the stories say he couldn't actually clear the hurdle, so he'd just run straight through them.
What? He went through?
Yeah, he'd get all banged up, but somehow he made it to the regional championships.
Oh my gosh. That's just wild.
It shows you the kind of tenacity this guy had, right?
Yeah, totally. A willingness to push through even when things got tough.
And that kind of grit, it takes you places.
So true.
Okay, so back to football at Columbia. He's elected captain, a clear sign of leadership, but then as head coach, 6 straight losing seasons.
Ouch, that's got to be tough.
It was. And it seems like one of his biggest challenges was that he cared so much about his players' well-being that it sometimes overshadowed the desire to win.
So even in a competitive environment, he was putting people first.
Exactly. He didn't want to bench players who were giving it their all, and he really prioritized their academics.
Wow, so he was already thinking beyond the game.
Yeah, he saw his role as setting these guys up for life, not just football.
That's pretty remarkable.
And think about this. At the same time, he's working like crazy to fund his own education, driving a cab in New York City.
A cab driver.
Yep. And on top of that, he's relentlessly recruiting for a struggling football program.
I mean, talk about juggling multiple demanding roles.
Right. It's incredible.
That kind of work ethic is something else.
Totally. And later on, Bill actually reflected on his time at Columbia. He said his failure boiled down to too much compassion and not enough dispassionate toughness.
Interesting.
He felt like he lacked the ruthlessness that's often associated with winning, especially in competitive sports.
So he was already aware of this tension between his natural empathy and the demands of a win-at-all-costs mentality.
Yeah, and that self-awareness, it's crucial for growth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this compassionate losing football coach. How does he end up in Silicon Valley?
Good question.
Well, after Columbia, he actually goes on to be a successful assistant coach at Boston College.
So things were looking up.
They were, but his loyalty pulled him back to Columbia as head coach.
Ah, back to those losing seasons.
Yeah, and eventually he resigned. He was feeling kind of blunted by the whole experience.
I can imagine.
So he moves on to Kodak, a more traditional corporate setting, but it wasn't quite the right fit.
What was missing?
I think he was craving a more meritocratic environment.
Ah, a place where success was based on talent and hard work, not just on who you knew.
Exactly, and that's what drew him to Silicon Valley.
Land of opportunity.
Right, and he landed at Apple.
Wow, okay, so this is where things really start to take off.
They do. Within 9 months, he's VP of Sales and Marketing, overseeing the launch of the Macintosh.
That's a meteoric rise.
And you might remember that iconic 1984 Super Bowl ad.
Oh, yeah, the one that broke all the rules.
Exactly. Well, the Apple board reportedly hated it. They thought it was way too controversial.
But it went on to become one of the most famous ads of all time.
It did, and Bill and Steve Jobs, they loved it. They were totally on board with the bold vision.
So they were already showing that willingness to challenge conventions and take risks?
Absolutely. They had a shared belief in the power of disruptive ideas.
That's a powerful combination.
So we've seen his early years, his unexpected entry into Silicon Valley. Now let's dig into what made him such a sought-after coach.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
So the book makes a clear distinction between coaching and mentoring.
What's the difference?
Well, mentors, they offer wisdom based on their experience, right?
Yeah.
But Bill's coaching was way more active and involved. He wasn't just handing out advice.
So what was he doing?
He was rolling up his sleeves, working alongside people to help them identify their challenges and come up with real strategies to overcome them.
So it was a true partnership then?
Exactly. He'd hold up a mirror to your blind spots, make sure you were accountable for your goals, and he'd champion your growth, all without seeking any personal recognition.
Sounds like the ideal coach.
And here's the really amazing part. Bill could coach people in roles and industries he didn't fully understand himself.
Really? How is that even possible?
It shows you that his core skills weren't tied to any specific domain. It was about understanding people, their motivations, their patterns of behavior.
So it was more about human dynamics than technical expertise.
Exactly. He was a master at creating environments where people could learn and thrive no matter what kind of work they were doing.
That's so valuable.
It is, and it leads us to it's the People Manifesto, which Bill really championed at Intuit.
Okay, what's that all about?
It's a simple idea, but incredibly powerful. It basically says that a manager's top priority must be the well-being and success of their team members.
So put your people first.
Exactly. And, it sounds obvious, but in the hustle and bustle of business, it's easy to lose sight of that.
Oh, for sure, especially when you're focused on hitting targets and meeting deadlines.
Right. But Bill, he never wavered on that belief, and the loyalty and high performance of the people he coached, it speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of prioritizing your people.
So how did this people-first philosophy translate into actual management
I
practices?
was curious to know.
Well, Bill focused a lot on the operational side of things, the nuts and bolts of running a company.
Like what specifically?
Navigating crises, making key hires, developing the team, and even something as routine as staff meetings. He saw it all as crucial.
So he wasn't just focused on the big picture strategy, he was also paying attention to the day-to-day operations.
Exactly. He understood that those foundational elements were the bedrock of any successful organization.
That makes sense.
And he was a big believer in both one-on-one meetings and staff meetings. But he had a very specific way of approaching them.
Tell me more.
Well, for instance, Eric Schmidt, he adopted the practice of starting Google staff meetings with weekend or trip reports.
Really like casual conversations about what people did over the weekend.
Yeah, it seems informal, but it served a crucial purpose. It built personal connections right at the start of the meeting.
So it was about setting a more relaxed and connected tone before diving into business.
Exactly. It created a sense of camaraderie, which is so important for effective collaboration.
And what about staff meetings in general? How did Bill approach those?
Well, he insisted that they should be reserved for addressing really critical issues. The kind of challenges that demanded a collective effort.
So not just routine updates or status reports?
No, it had to be something that required real problem solving.
Like a strategic decision or a major obstacle.
Exactly. And there's a great story about Jerry Kaplan from Scugo Corporation.
Right.
He wanted to discuss the threat of Microsoft competition with Bill in a private meeting.
Okay.
But Bill insisted that it had to be a discussion for the entire team.
He wanted everyone involved.
Yeah, he wanted everyone to have a shared understanding of the challenge and to contribute to finding a solution.
That's powerful.
It creates a sense of ownership and buy-in across the entire team.
So what about those one-on-one meetings? Bill had a reputation for being incredibly direct in those.
He did, and he had a clear structure. He'd start with some small talk, build rapport.
Okay. Sounds pretty standard.
But then he'd move into discussions about performance, how you were doing in your role.
All right, that makes sense.
But then he'd focus on peer relationships. He believed that strong connections with your colleagues were even more crucial than the manager-employee relationship.
Really? Why is that?
I think he understood that peer relationships, they create a support system, a network of trust and collaboration.
So it's about building a strong foundation within the team itself.
Exactly. And from peer relationships, he'd move into team dynamics. How was the team functioning? Were they on track to meet their goals?
Okay, so he was really thinking about the team as a whole.
And finally, he'd delve into innovation. Was there space for new ideas? Were they finding ways to balance innovation with execution?
So he covered a lot of ground in these one-on-one meetings.
He did. It was a very holistic approach.
Yeah.
He wasn't just focused on immediate tasks, but on the overall health and direction of both the individual and the team.
That's impressive.
And as you mentioned, Bill was known for his direct communication style.
Oh, yeah. Nirav Tolia learned that the hard way.
Bill basically told him to cut the fluff in his presentations, to get straight to the point.
No beating around the bush.
Nope. Bill valued clarity and authenticity. He wanted people to own their ideas and express them clearly.
Sounds like a good lesson for all of us.
It is. And then there's decision-making, another area where Bill had a strong philosophy.
What was his approach?
Well, he was a big fan of what he called the rule of two.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, when there was a conflict, he'd encourage the two people most directly involved to work it out together.
So empower them to find their own solution.
Exactly. It fosters ownership and often leads to more creative outcomes.
Makes sense.
But Bill was also clear that if consensus couldn't be reached, the manager had to step in and make the call.
So a balance between collaboration and decisive leadership.
Right. He'd seen the damage that indecision could cause during his time at Apple.
Yeah, that can really paralyze a team.
And once a decision was made, he expected everyone to be fully committed, even those who initially disagreed.
No holding back.
Nope. He'd be very direct about it, sometimes even saying that if you couldn't support the decision, you might need to reconsider being on the team.
Wow, so he was serious about alignment.
Absolutely. He knew that a divided team couldn't move forward effectively.
That's a powerful message.
It is. And then there's this idea of first principles thinking, which Bill used to guide people.
What's that?
It's about breaking down complex problems into their fundamental truths.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Sure. Well, he helped Mike McHugh at Tellme make a crucial strategic decision. They had an offer to license their core technology to AT&T for a huge sum of money.
Wow, that's a tempting offer.
It was. But Bill encouraged Mike to think about the long-term implications. What was the core value proposition to Tellme, and would licensing it to a potential competitor undermine that?
So strip away the immediate financial incentive and focus on the fundamental principles of the business.
Exactly. And in the end, they decided not to license the technology.
Wow, bold move.
It was, but it was a decision rooted in a deep understanding of their core principles.
That's what sets great leaders apart.
Now, beyond all these practical techniques, Bill was also a master at building trust and psychological safety.
Right. You mentioned that envelope of trust.
Yeah, he could establish that so quickly, and it was essential, especially when it came to having tough conversations.
Because when there's trust, people are more open to feedback and willing to take risks.
Exactly, and he had this key principle: only coach the coachable.
Meaning
He'd only invest his time in people who were genuinely open to learning and growing.
he wasn't going to waste his energy on those who weren't receptive?
Right. And there's a great story about Jonathan Rosenberg's first interview with Bill.
Oh, tell me.
Bill basically asked him, straight up, "Are you coachable?"
Wow, so direct.
He was. And for Bill, humility and a desire to learn were non-negotiables.
So he was looking for people who were self-aware and eager to improve.
Exactly. And he also believed in the power of respectful inquiry as a coaching technique.
What's that?
It's about asking open-ended questions and really listening to the responses, guiding people to find their own insights.
So instead of giving all the answers, you're helping them discover the answers themselves.
Exactly. And then there's Bill's feedback style.
Yeah.
He was incredibly direct and honest.
Sometimes brutally so.
Yeah, but it always came from a place of genuine care. He wanted to see people succeed.
It's that balance of caring personally and challenging directly.
Right, it's like Kim Scott's concept of radical candor.
I like that.
And Bill He even used humor to deliver tough messages.
Really? Like how?
Well, he once called Dan Rosensweig the most successful non-growth CEO.
Ouch, but I guess you gotta laugh sometimes.
Right? It can help soften the blow and make the message more memorable.
True.
And Bill understood the importance of timing and context. He always gave critical feedback in private.
That's so important.
It is, and even when he was incredibly blunt, like telling Pat Gallagher his ballpark was the worst in America, or Jesse Rogers, his company's website was a piece of shit,
Oh my gosh.
people often felt better afterward because they knew he had their best interests at heart.
It's all about trust, right?
Exactly, and Bill, he built that trust by consistently showing up for people, being there for them through thick and thin.
That's how you earn respect.
And he also encouraged authenticity in the workplace. He wanted people to bring their whole selves to work, to be genuine.
That creates a much more human and connected environment.
It does. And when people feel safe to be themselves, they're more likely to appreciate the authenticity of others.
It's a positive cycle.
All right, now let's talk teams. Bill had this core principle: work the team, then the problem.
Interesting. So focus on the team dynamics before tackling the issue itself.
Exactly. He believed that a strong, well-functioning team could solve even the most complex problems.
And he saw that firsthand, right?
He did. Shriram talks about how Bill would always bring people together, foster collaboration.
And Sundar Pichai learned from Bill that at the CEO level, one of the most crucial tasks is to bet on the right people.
Yeah, build a strong team. That's the foundation for everything else.
So it's not just about making the right decisions, it's about surrounding yourself with the right people.
Exactly. And there's a great example of this, the conflict between Google and Apple over phone features.
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal.
It was. And Bill, he didn't get caught up in the technical details. Instead, he focused on putting the right person in charge of managing that relationship.
So it was about finding someone who could navigate the complexities of that partnership.
Exactly. Someone who could build bridges and find common ground.
That takes a special kind of skill set.
It does. And Bill had an uncanny ability to spot those skills in people.
So what qualities did he look for in people?
Well, four main things. Smarts, specifically the ability to make what he called FAR analogies: hard work, integrity, and grit.
Okay, break those down for me.
So FAR analogies, that's about being able to connect seemingly unrelated ideas to think creatively.
Ah, I see. So it's not just about being smart, it's about being able to think outside the box.
Right. And then hard work, integrity, grit.
Yeah.
Those are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, but how did he assess those qualities in people?
You'd pay close attention to how they described their accomplishments in interviews. Was it all about I, or did they emphasize the we?
So he was listening for signs of a team player?
Exactly. Someone who shared credit and valued collaboration.
That's subtle but important.
It is. And Bill, he believed that even when someone stumbled, it was an opportunity for growth.
Like Jonathan's brief departure from Google.
Yeah, Bill didn't give up on him, but he also made sure Jonathan understood the impact his actions had on the team.
So accountability was key.
Absolutely. And Bill also highly valued courage. The willingness to take risks and speak up for what's right.
But he also had a tolerance for strong personalities, right?
He knew that sometimes the most talented people could be a little prickly.
But how do you balance that with the need for teamwork?
It's about finding people who are passionate and driven, but also fundamentally committed to the team's success.
So it's about managing those personalities within a framework of shared goals.
Exactly. And Sheryl Sandberg, she learned a valuable lesson from Bill in their first meeting. He told her, it's not what you used to do. It's not what you think. It's what you do every day.
So focus on your daily impact.
Right. And he also advised Jonathan to actively include dissenting voices in team meetings.
Why is that important?
It leads to more robust decision-making. It challenges assumptions and uncovers potential blind spots.
And it makes people feel heard, which is crucial for buy-in.
Totally. And speaking of teams, Bill was all about fostering strong peer relationships.
How so?
He'd pair people up on projects specifically to build those connections.
So it wasn't just about individual growth, it was about strengthening the bonds within the team.
Exactly. And he even coached Jonathan to mentor Patrick Pichette, specifically to build trust within the Google management team.
Wow. So he was strategically building those relationships.
And he was very direct about making sure everyone had a seat at the table.
Yeah.
There's a story about him telling Debbie Andolillo at Apple staff meetings to get to the table.
He wanted everyone to have a voice.
He believed in creating an inclusive environment where everyone felt valued and empowered to contribute.
That's so important.
It is. And Bill was also a strong advocate for gender diversity on teams.
Really?
Yeah, he often cited research on collective intelligence and emotional reading skills, and he actively worked to recruit and support women in leadership positions.
So he was ahead of his time in recognizing the value of diversity.
He was, and Shelley Archambault, she actually applied Bill's principles about gender diversity in her office in Bangalore.
That's inspiring.
It shows you how his influence extended far beyond Silicon Valley.
Okay, so we've talked about building trust, fostering collaboration.
Mm.
What about navigating conflict?
Well, Bill was like a master tension spotter.
Meaning what?
He could sense when things were getting tense,
Yeah.
before they escalated into full-blown drama.
So he was proactive about addressing issues.
Very much so. He tackled tough problems head on, and he wouldn't allow bitch sessions to drag on.
So no dwelling on negativity.
Nope, he'd quickly shift the focus to problem solving.
Like during the iPhone 3G launch?
Yeah, there were a lot of challenges with that launch, and Bill, he kept everyone focused on finding solutions.
That's a valuable skill.
It is, and for Bill, it wasn't just about winning, it was about winning right.
What does that mean?
It means achieving success with integrity, with unwavering commitment, and strong teamwork.
So it's not just about the outcome, it's about the process.
Exactly. And he demonstrated this in all areas of his life, even when he was coaching his son's football team.
Really?
Yeah, he refused to take calls from Steve Jobs during practice.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
Right. He was fully present in that moment, and he instilled those values in his players.
That's powerful.
It is. And he also knew how to deliver tough love when needed. He gave some very direct feedback to NFL player Charlie Batch.
What did he say?
He told him he needed to step up his game, that he had the potential to be great, but he wasn't living up to it.
And how did Charlie Batch take it?
He took it to heart. He actually credits Bill with helping him turn his career around.
So the tough love worked.
It did. And Bill also supported people through their struggles. He urged Dan Rosenzweig to stay strong and keep leading during a difficult time at Chegg.
So he was there for people in the good times and the bad.
Absolutely. And he knew that in tough situations, decisive leadership was more important than ever.
Makes sense when things are chaotic, you need a clear direction.
And finally, we come to the power of connection and genuine care, which was really at the heart of Bill's approach.
This is what people remember most about it.
Right? They do. He was all about building relationships and fostering understanding. He'd proactively address potential issues by just talking to people.
So open communication was key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he deeply valued empathy. He'd joke that touchy-feely stuff isn't in the manual.
But he clearly believed in it.
He did his hugs, his occasional swear words. It all came from a place of genuine affection.
He had his own unique way of showing he cared.
He did. And he had these memorable sayings, those Billisms.
Like what?
Oh, things like, let's go get 'em, or you can do it, or I love you. He wasn't afraid to express his feelings.
And he treated everyone with respect.
Absolutely. From the janitor to the CEO, everyone was equal in his eyes.
That's true leadership.
It is, and he showed incredible loyalty to people. He even extended that loyalty to their families.
Really?
Yeah, there's a story about him being there for Mark Mazur's mother when she was going through a tough time.
Wow, that's going above and beyond.
He's a true friend and mentor, and for some, he even became a father figure.
Like Eric Schmidt and Omid Kordestani.
Yeah, and he was there to support people through their darkest moments, like Mike Homer and Steve Jobs when they were faced health challenges.
He was a rock for them.
He was, and he was also incredibly enthusiastic about celebrating successes. He'd get so pumped up about product demos, he'd even inspire people to adopt the Bill Campbell clap.
That's awesome.
It is. And beyond his coaching, Bill was a community builder. He loved bringing people together.
Like those Apple Super Bowl cushions.
Yeah, he'd give those out to everyone at Apple's headquarters so they could watch the game together.
He wanted to create a sense of shared experience.
Exactly. And he also sponsored his high school reunion and hosted gatherings at his bar, the Old Pro.
So he was all about fostering connections?
He believed in building social capital, and he was a master connector, always introducing people who he thought could help each other.
Like a human LinkedIn.
Haha, yeah. And he was known for doing those 5 favors.
Yeah.
Small acts of kindness that often had a huge impact.
It's those little things that can make a big difference.
They can help. And Bill, he played a pivotal role in supporting countless founders and CEOs.
Yeah, he was like a behind-the-scenes force in Silicon Valley.
He was. And ultimately, his legacy is that of a team coach.
Someone who understood the power of bringing people together.
Exactly. He used to say that a team is like a football huddle in a crucial moment. Everyone's focused on the same goal. Everyone's supporting each other.
It's a beautiful analogy.
It is. And he believed that the best team coach is often the team's manager.
So leadership and coaching, they go hand in hand.
They do. And what set Bill apart was his understanding of the human element. He knew that positive human values lead to positive business outcomes.
So it's not just about strategy and metrics, it's about people.
Exactly. And the ERIC 3.0 project, it's a perfect example of how his principles can be applied in new and innovative ways.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it's basically an initiative that uses technology and Bill's coaching methods to help people develop their leadership skills.
Wow, so his legacy lives on.
It does so to sum it all up. Bill Campbell's coaching was this amazing blend of high expectations, incredibly direct feedback, and deep, genuine care for individuals and the team as a whole.
He was a rare breed.
He was, and his core principles, they're timeless: prioritize your people, build trust, foster open communication, make clear decisions, and always strive to win right.
Words to live by.
They are. And so as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about Bill's impact and consider which of his principles resonates most strongly with you and the challenges you face within your own teams.
That's a good question.
Are you maybe leaning too heavily on that dispassionate toughness, or perhaps erring on the side of too much compassion?
It's about finding that balance, right?
It is finding that sweet spot that allows you to lead and coach more effectively in your own sphere of influence.
That's something we can all strive for.
Absolutely. Thanks for going deep with us today.
My pleasure.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
See? Bye.